But first to London for breaking news. In the last few hours, Britain's Crown Prosecution Service has announced 8 people arrested on suspicion of phone hacking will be formally charged. The 8 will face a total of 19 charges and include former News International chief Rebekah Brooks and Prime Minister David Cameron's former aide Andy Coulson. Both are former editors of the now defunct News of the World. Also to be charged are private investigator Glenn Mulcair, former News of the World senior journalists including Stuart Kuttner, Greg Miskew, Ian Edmondson, Neville Thurlbeck and James Weatherup. And joining us with the latest is ABC correspondent Lisa Miller. Lisa, so what now for these 8 former News of the World staffers?
Well, in the immediate next few hours, we'll be seeing them head to various police stations around London where they'll have to report in for their bail conditions and they'll be formally charged. At the moment, this is what we've seen over the last couple of hours is the results of Scotland Yard's incredibly intense investigation. 100 of police officers who've been raiding homes over the last few months. They've put together this file, given it to the Crown prosecutors. They've sat on it for a couple of weeks now, going through it and working out just what charges might be laid, if any, and whether it was in the public interest to go ahead with some of the charges. And that's why we've discovered today, out of 13 possible suspects that were put forward in this initial investigation, that 8 of them will face these charges, and that's what will happen at the police station. Quite an extraordinary day, you can imagine. We're talking about some of the biggest names in tabloid journalism here in Britain, and every day seems to have been dramatic with the Leveson inquiry and these various investigations, but you would have to consider that this is a very significant day.
And Lisa, big names, all right. The police, it seems, believe they have the evidence that people like Rebekah Brooks and Andy Coulson were involved in phone hacking.
Yes, and they're the people who've kept coming up in the investigations. Those names, they've appeared themselves before various inquiries. Rebekah Brooks, just in the last little while, has put out a statement absolutely rejecting the allegations and saying that, in fact, the one name that comes up, this phone hacking of Millie Dowler, the murdered teenager, that was the one, of course, that sparked the furor. That went to the heart of how many of the public felt that how low the media could go, and it was the evidence about Millie Dowler's phone being hacked that then sparked the Leveson inquiry. So Rebekah Brooks to answer not only the more general charge of intercepting communications between October 2000 and August 2006, but the more specific charge in regards to Millie Dowler. She says that has upset her greatly because she has been a campaigner for victims of crime, so she'll be vigorously defending those allegations. And then, of course, Andy Coulson. I mean, 10 Downing Street is going to be feeling very uncomfortable right at the moment because a court case, you just never know what direction that might go, as we've seen with various text messages and emails that have suddenly popped up into the public domain. David Cameron, who employed Andy Coulson, we've now heard against the recommendation of some people. He was questioned whether he'd asked enough questions about Andy Coulson. He too has denied that he was involved with phone hacking, although other journalists who worked under him when he was editor of the News of the World have suggested that he in fact not only allowed it to go on but encouraged it. So they're the allegations that will now be aired in court. And then, of course, Neville Thurlbeck, you'll remember the For Neville email, for those who followed this case closely, which suggested this senior reporter had been an email with dozens of transcripts of hacked communications, and that he was the man that this email was destined for. Certainly big name, Steve, and a lot of evidence that's going to end up coming out in public over many, many months. That's the thing here. There's no end date to this. It will go on, which is going to be very uncomfortable for people who have ties to these people and these cases.
Lisa Miller, thanks very much for that update.